Evening. So this is one of a series of events we hold to engage with parish councils. We've got a few, not so many tonight. I don't know what the other attraction is. I do know that there's someone from the British Museum talking at the Kindle Centre about the Herefordshire Hoard, so there might be some people who've gone to that. And maybe others are starting to plant their own vegetables in the garden. But we decided to go ahead, even though it's a smaller number. The meeting is going to talk about some findings from some research that's been done about the voluntary sector in Herefordshire. It'd be interesting to look at that, but also to think so what, what are the next actions after that? And I know Amy has some thoughts about that. So I think perhaps with no more ado, I'm going to introduce you to Hilary Hall. Day 3, I think, Hilary, isn't it? So Hilary has come from closer to London, I think Maidenhead, wasn't it, or somewhere like that, to deal with to address our adults, to be the corporate director in that area. And you're not a newcomer to Hereford, are you, Hilary? Over to you.
Okay, thanks everyone. It's great to be back in Herefordshire. So I'm born and bred, and I worked for a number of the previous authorities and Herefordshire Council before, and I left about 10 years ago to go and work in near London. I'm delighted to be back. Talk Communities was one of the reasons that really attracted me to come back to Herefordshire, but obviously it's good to come home as well. And I'm really excited about working with you over the coming months, really, and obviously looking forward to coming out and meeting you in person, because whilst the virtual space is great, it's not the same as meeting you in person. So I look forward to being able to do that as well. But thank you, and yeah, I'm excited.
Great, thanks, Hilary. Amy, is it you next?
I think we're going to go straight into Nina, isn't it, to give an overview of the State of the Sector report for the and to give a bit of an overview of that, and then followed up by we have a guest here tonight, Karen from HVOSS, to give us an overview then of the the volunteer strategy and the plans around that, and then we'll go into a couple of workshops just to talk that through in terms of actions and next steps, really. So I'll hand over to Nina to give an overview of the VCSE State of the Sector report that we undertook a few months ago.
Thank you, Amy. So for those people who don't know me, I'm Nina Bridges, and I'm the Talk Community Development Manager here at Herefordshire Council. Just a few slides to let you know about the work that was undertaken the end of last year around the state of the sector. And when we talk about the sector, we're talking about the voluntary community and social enterprise sector, so VCSE. So we commissioned impact consultancy to do this piece of work, and it was very much a partnership approach between the Herefordshire Council and the voluntary sector, and the principal organisation that was helping us steer it was HVOSS, and we've got Karen Hall here from HVOSS this evening that's going to talk about the volunteering strategy. But if I just crack on in terms of the State of the Sector report. So really it was, we commissioned it to have a greater understanding of the sector at both Herefordshire level, but also across the primary care network level in Herefordshire, to get some evidence of the value and impact of the voluntary sector, look at levels of engagement and impact of the partnership working that we know is taking place, not just within the sector, but across, with the public sector, including parish councils and the private sector, and just understand what the issues are for the sector at the moment and how we can support the voluntary and community organisations moving forwards.
Nina, sorry, have you moved on to the next slide?
Oh, I have. Is it not?
No. Right.
Have I stopped sharing? Or
you have, yeah, stop sharing, yeah. don't know if you want to send it to Lorna or anybody.
Lorna, you've got it. Are you able to share it?
Nina, it might have been because when you were sharing it, you didn't have it in full view mode, as in a full slideshow. So when you were skipping on yours, it might not have been scrolling down on this.
Right. Okay.
You looking to bring it up, Nina, or Lorna? Are you looking to bring it up? Lorna, and you're on mute.
I'm struggling to. Right. Let's try again.
Apologies about this, everyone.
Yeah.
No, still struggling.
I will get there.
Oh, well, Lorna's starting to show it now.
Okay. Right. So
That's yep.
yeah.
Brilliant.
Right. Thank you. Right. So in terms of the data that was used for the report, this was the main reason that we commissioned Impact to conduct an online survey of voluntary and community sector organisations in the county. And if any parish councils were sort of passed that on to their community organisations within their local area, very grateful. We got 281 responses, which is about a 12% response rate. It's not, you know, we would have liked better, but the responses that we did receive, Impact felt were representative of the sector. So we can use the evidence from that to inform the report, the findings and the recommendations. There were also 8 online focus groups, and we did do some interviews with, Impact did some interviews with local infrastructure organisations. So those organisations that support the voluntary and community sector across Herefordshire, as well as public sector commissioners. And there was an awful lot of data, public data, that was also accessible via organisations such as the Charity Commission and Companies House. So quite a lot of data and quite rich data that helped inform the report. So next slide, please. Right, so this really helped to inform what the sector looks like now. And there's some really excellent headline findings, I think, from this that we can celebrate. So we've got over 2,300 voluntary and community sector organisations based or operating in Herefordshire, of which just over 1,300 of those are registered charities. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the vast majority of those organisations are small or micro organisations. So when we're talking about that, micro is under 10k income per annum, and small is between 10 and 100k. So the vast majority are of that size. What I think is significant is that over 4,000 people are employed in the sector, and that compares with 9,000 in the public sector. And obviously there's a lot more in the private sector in Herefordshire, but just under half compared with the public sector are employed in the voluntary sector. Total economic contribution, we think this is probably an underestimate, but it's still a big number. So £355 million worth of income per annum. 60 million of that income is used for staffing, and then obviously the rest is used as other income to provide the other services, activities and on costs required in the organisations. We've given an estimate to the value of volunteering at £17 million per annum, but we think that's probably understated. And we know that at just under a third of adults volunteer in Herefordshire, with almost a quarter of them doing that on a regular monthly basis. Next slide, please. Oops.
I think we've done. Are those the slides?
No, I've got loads.
Beg your
Well, I haven't got
pardon.
loads
Oh,
more.
sorry.
I've got some
I've
more.
gone too fast now. Yep, sorry. There we go.
Right. So where do organise operate? So as we picked up, at least 80% operate, are very small organisations. So unsurprisingly, a significant number operate in just one primary care network area. And some of those are even more local within, their local community. And almost 80% operate within Herefordshire only. So only 20% are operating on a broader footprint. Just in terms of national comparators, just thought it was quite interesting to highlight that there are more charities in Herefordshire than the rest of the county if you look at per head of population. So 4.32 charities in Herefordshire per 1,000 head of population compared to 2.43 for the whole of the UK. But those charities generate less income per head of population. So 0.5 million per 1,000 population compared to 0.84. So we've got more of them, but they're drawing in less income. Just touching on that partnership working, that collaboration. So almost a third of voluntary organisations work very closely together, and over a third, did I say a third or 2/3? 2/3, and a third work with the public sector. Interestingly, it's a lot less that work with the business sector, so we think there's a lot of scope there to increase that relationship. In terms of infrastructure support, so that is support the voluntary and community organisations get from those larger organisations that provide, support with development and services and help with volunteering, etc. They got most of that information through online sources. Almost 30% from other voluntary and community sector organisations and 18% from the public sector. And there's a bit of a lower profile with those local infrastructure organisations than anticipated. So there's a clear piece of work to be done there to raise the profile of those organisations that work in Herefordshire that are supporting the voluntary and community sector more widely. Very clear message that came out of this was more need to keep going with this collaborative partnership working that was demonstrated through COVID. That really demonstrated the value of voluntary and community sector organisations working together, but also public sector organisations and private organisations all working together to support local communities. And that was very much a clear message. We need to continue to do that moving forwards. So what does the future look like? When asked, the survey respondents, almost 3/4 thought the demand for their services would increase over the next couple of years, both in terms of because they might have seen a reduction due to COVID, but they felt that now in the post-COVID, well, we're not in post-COVID, but learning to live with the COVID world, that there would be an increased demand on their services, especially for those residents that perhaps are more vulnerable. Also demand for cultural and recreation activities post-COVID, as well as an increase in the need for health and social care services. And very much across the board, it was noticed or a lot of comments about the need for more mental health and wellbeing services. It's also worth pointing out that there are a number of new organisations that have started up, particularly around supporting debt management, as well as supporting children and young people and environmental groups and faith-based. So again, that might be an indication of the demand that they're seeing at a local level. So what are the challenges for the sector? Very much fed back, and I'm sure Karen will pick up on this later, about the need to recruit and retain volunteers, secure funding. We've got 40% of our organisations in the sector rely on grant for at least half their income. So very much need to support them in terms of securing that funding, but also look at alternative ways of making sure their services are sustainable. They very much felt post-COVID that there was a need for marketing and communication of what they do, so they get more people back through the door, as well as encourage more volunteers and others to get involved in the work that they're doing. Wanted to network, wanted to collaborate, but it was having the capacity to do that. They felt that they need to get the message out clearer to all parties about what the sector does, and they just felt that there was maybe a need to rebalance the relationship in terms of working most significantly, I guess, with public sector colleagues, and that this again is their perception that the value of the voluntary sector needs to be better understood. And as well, again, about how can we work together to address the issues that we're currently facing. So we're well aware of the cost of living and the pressures that's putting on households, and the need to focus on early help and prevention across our residents in Herefordshire. So I'm not going to go through all of these recommendations in great detail, but collaboration came out to the fore in terms of looking at how we can better network and collaborate together to the benefit of residents in Herefordshire. There was certainly, as I've illustrated earlier, the need for particular areas of support to help the voluntary and community sector thrive. Also, the need to look at developing relationships with the private sector and the voluntary and community sector. How do we support the voluntary and community sector to win contracts and be commissioned to deliver across the services that they're supporting in Herefordshire? Again, you know, just raising part of the conversation this evening is about raising the profile of the sector and understanding its value, as well as doing further research into specific areas that have been identified through the work. And again, as I think I mentioned earlier, mental health provision came through that and was writ loud and clear. And just to say, there will be a further study undertaken in a couple of years' time to see how the state of the sector has changed, and whether any of the recommendations that we're proposing to take forward has obviously had a benefit for the sector. Last slide, you'll be pleased to hear. So just in terms of next steps, going around sharing the findings and publishing the report. So this is obviously part of sharing the findings. The report will be published on the Understanding Herefordshire website, and that will be happening in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll obviously use the findings and recommendations. There's a very substantial report that goes alongside this. So a lot of information to help develop action plan to respond to the recommendations and inform how infrastructure support is provided to help the voluntary and community sector develop and thrive. And also very much driving forward joint working to meet the future challenges and opportunities that we're understanding and describing in terms of Herefordshire, particularly around, as I said, challenges around poverty, the cost of living, and needing to support prevention and early intervention to support our residents in Herefordshire. And I can leave it there.
Thank you, Nina. Really helpful overview, and I think it's fair to say we're really fortunate in Hereford to have such a fantastic voluntary and community sector, which supports all of the population across Hereford. And I think that sort of really shows that, and certainly, you know, in terms of the value that it brings, not just monetary, but in supporting, like I say, those individuals. So really, thank you, Nina. That's really helpful. As Nina said, with the plan is that we look to do that survey again in a couple of years' time, just to see where the sector is and how it's developing. And obviously, on the back of this, we will be looking to do an action plan. But part of tonight as well is how we feed it, how you feed into that action plan for us to take this forward as well, because clearly a very important sector for us to be working with in partnership to develop and grow for the future as well. So just in response to that, so some of the work that HVOSS that have been doing in the background and sort of aligning to this is the developing the volunteer strategy for the county, because obviously hearing that through that survey, there's, you know, a lot of saying about need more volunteers at all different levels, from, you know, just supporting people on a day-to-day basis, but also from maybe even at that level of being on trustee and boards of these voluntary organisations. And I know often parish councils have vacancies and gaps in that as well. So we've got Karen here tonight, who's just going to give us an overview as well in terms of where HVOSS are with regards to the volunteer strategy and how that kind of links back into what Nina has just provided as an overview. And then what we will do is just break into a couple of workshops just to talk this through in terms of from a parish council perspective and how we can move this forward. So Karen, can I pass the baton to you?
Let's hope my sharing screen works. Thank you very much. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share HVOSS's proposed volunteering strategy for the county. It's based on the State of the Sector report findings, which Nina has shared, and particularly on the focus groups that were run, which were enabled groups to share their views in a slightly different way, in a more detailed way, and on what organisations and groups come to HVOSS and tell us they want and need, and things we're already supporting them with. So it's the proposed strategy, and I really welcome sharing it with you and for your views. Let's see if it works. So I shall share my screen, and there we go. If somebody could let me know if I'm there.
Not quite.
Has it arrived?
No. Oh yeah, it's something's coming up.
Is it there?
Yeah, and then just
and then from
the slideshow.
Okay, so there we
Brilliant.
are. Is it working?
It is, yeah. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. So as I said, it's based on the State of the Sector survey and what organisations are telling us. So it's a proposed volunteering strategy. And this is what our vision is for volunteering, and it's for Herefordshire to 2030. So we really hope for a county which has a culture which encourages, supports and facilitates everyone's engagement in voluntary activity. You'll notice that I very rarely use the V word as a verb. I will use it to describe what people do voluntarily, but not as a name. I tend to avoid people being called volunteers. So I think one of the things we need to be doing is changing the language about when we're talking about what people do. We want everyone's contribution to be valued, recognised and celebrated. I'm sure we all think that that's what we do, and a lot of organisations do, but we want to make it much higher profile. We want to support the communities to lead on developing their own community and response to any support needs, which includes people giving their time voluntarily to develop it. That the community and people who live in it benefit from the time, knowledge and experience that's shared. So it's done for a reason, and it is to benefit that community and the people who live in it. And that community organisations and groups work in partnership or collaborate with businesses and services to deliver innovative and responsive support and share their skills and knowledge. So one of the things that Nina said was that we want to build on the collaboration that's been happening through COVID, and it really has been tremendous, the amount of partnership. We don't want to lose it. we're trying to hold on to what has been happening and to develop it even further. You'll notice that there it's talking about innovation as well, because we know that there are different ways of doing things. So there are several main strands. And the first one we're looking at is corporate volunteering. We want to focus on skills sharing here. So we know that there are organisations who have people who have tremendous skills that the community organisations have told us they need. They've told us they need financial advice, marketing advice, digital skills, marketing skills. And we know that there are organisations in the county, in the corporate sector, who have all of those skills. And we know that several of the organisations in the county, the businesses, commit to supporting their staff to engage in volunteering for a certain number of days a year. For example, the council supports their employees to volunteer for 2 days a year. We know that a lot of them volunteered for the vaccination clinics in 2020, not so many in last year, but in fact, there were actually many people who could volunteer at the vaccination clinics and did so. However, they could potentially have have shared their skills in marketing and finance, etc., with the groups who are telling us they need them and which they don't have the funding to buy. So what we're proposing is that we encourage businesses to share that knowledge through webinars, workshops. We already run, HVOSS already runs Meet the Funder workshops, for example, which are very well subscribed, and there would appear to be little reason why we couldn't run a webinar or a workshop on finance or marketing or digital skills, which the organisations tell us they want. And potentially businesses could offer one-to-one direct support and mentoring. So if, for example, there was a new chief exec in post, or a new finance director in post, or a new group of trustees in a new organisation, perhaps companies and businesses could be encouraged to provide that support to the organisations. And that would be on a voluntary basis. So it would therefore be corporate volunteering, but it would be using their skills and knowledge well. But we also need the community organisations to be offering activity or defining the activity that they need corporate volunteers for. So this is a two-way street. It has to be something that's developed collaboratively, because businesses could be telling the community organisations what they have to offer, but the community organisations also need to be telling the corporations what they need, which has to be defined. The other thing is that they need to be suggesting events, for example, or ways in which they could specifically help. So if, for example, they need a room to be decorated, perhaps one of the local organisations could offer, we could get, I don't know, the Wicks and Jewsons and goodness knows who else, and the Dulux Centre to offer to volunteer to do that room up. So there will be ways in which that can happen. You all probably know about the former High Sheriff's plan. She launched a LinkedIn site to get businesses and community organisations working together. That needs to be developed further. So we believe there is a lot of there's a lot of will out there, but I'm not sure we are good enough yet or confident enough yet that we're getting everybody together in a way which works. We have to know what they need and how we can make it work to make sure that it benefits the community group, but also benefits the corporate partner. Has to work for both. It might be sponsorship, it might be commissioning services, which would be a lovely way of getting more funding into the community sector. Or might they just come together for a specific task or event? So another strand is a new and flexible and responsive model of volunteering. So this is different messaging. The messaging is based on people who give their time voluntarily. We've just launched an active response team, the HEART team. Volunteers are being recruited. We have nearly 30 already at the moment supporting events, including Pride and the Horde and the baton visit. So they're mainly supporting events that are already in place, but we know that there is potential for specialised teams. You will know about the volunteer response to the floods and to COVID. We want to encourage younger people. So there are all sorts of potential for specialised teams, but we also know that there is potential to support more specialised roles. So for our example, we're talking about expanding the number of people who give their time voluntarily to support the hospital and people being discharged from hospital. There's also the potential for people who have extensive life experience and skills to support more vulnerable people in our community in a buddying approach. For example, young mothers who need support with parenting or that sort of thing, or young people who are leaving care. We think there's an awful lot of potential for people to work with others, sharing their life experience and skills. We're looking at training requirements. So all the HEART volunteers, for example, will have training which is appropriate to the role they will be fulfilling and their interest and their life experience and skills. And we believe there's great potential for partnership working, including with the emergency services and health, as I said previously. So the third main strand is younger people giving their time and learning skills. We want to support younger people to contribute. They tend to be recipients, don't they? They're recipients of support, of not always wanted attention or of even of approbation. And we want to encourage them to move into a contributing role where they see their own value and the value of their time to other people and their community. And their energy and there is no box thinking. So it isn't thinking outside the box. They don't think that way. They think it completely without a box. So it will be invaluable for this innovative approach we would like to encourage, where organisations are accustomed to thinking and doing the same as they always have. And this may actually be the reason why they're having difficulty attracting volunteers, as well as the fact that those volunteers may no longer be wishing to do so. So we want to encourage, empower and support younger people to lead. So encouraging them to lead in this business, in this enterprising approach. Organisations can be risk averse when it comes to supporting younger volunteers. They can think, well, it's just there are too many risks. Whereas our approach to risk is you risk assess it well to make sure it can happen, not to make sure it's not going to happen. And we want to support organisations to think differently, knowing there is support for the organisation to attract people who really want to give their time voluntarily. So the golden threads, and this whole strategy, I should say, reflects the NCVO, the National Council of Voluntary Organisations vision, but it's in the context of Herefordshire. So we believe that golden threads include a new approach and changes in language. As I said earlier, we're avoiding the focus on volunteering or volunteers because that has always had connotations of something being free or no cost and thus low value, whereas we know that everything has a cost and volunteering certainly does, because it needs to be coordinated in order for it to be successful, and it needs ongoing support and mentoring. So the language will be on making a contribution, sharing your skills and sharing your life experience, and thus giving your time voluntarily. We want to focus on awareness and appreciation. So saying thank you to volunteers. We launched Volunteer Thank You a few weeks ago, and interestingly, we have had 3 responses from community organisations. And we know that they really value their volunteers, or they think that they value their volunteers. So we need to be encouraging them to say thank you in a very visible way to ensure that the value of the people they're supporting is valued. We have a commitment from Councillor Bowen to support the development of the recognition awards that he was starting before the pandemic. So we're aiming for a big launch in 2023 during Volunteering Week. And leading up to that, HVOSS launched a Count Your Hours 22 to 23 at the beginning of June. So we are building an accumulator which will go onto the HVOSS website, in which we'll be able to record the hours that people are giving voluntarily. And we will want to keep publishing volunteer stories. So they'll be themed depending on the week. So there's Refugee Week, not only Volunteering Week and other weeks, but we'll also be celebrating individual stories.
Karen, I'm sorry, Karen, I'm just quite conscious of time.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Just do you think we could do it? Yeah.
Shall I? Yeah,
yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so another golden thread is power and leadership. We want to encourage people to recognise that trustees and councillors and lots of people give their time voluntarily. I don't think very many trustees see themselves as volunteers. If you stop and ask them, they say, well, no, I'm not a volunteer because they're not a traditional volunteer, but of course they are. So it will be encouraging people to use their life experience to become a trustee or a councillor. And we want to support communities and groups to listen to their community and develop a strategy which works for them, so everyone has a buy-in to it. And equity and inclusion is a golden thread. So we want to include as many people as we can into volunteering and encourage younger people to lead and work in partnership with social prescribers. I'll leave the National Academy of Social Prescribers for another day. So other golden threads, collaboration, I've already spoken about that. We know that there is enormous potential through the Talk Community hubs. And we're hoping that Herefordshire Council will be the first official sponsor of this commitment to the 2 days a year, sharing their skills. And experimentation, let's see if it can be done differently. Let's try it. If it doesn't work, we can try something else. So we want to avoid missed opportunities. So my last one, Amy. So community engagement in the strategy. Will Lindsay, HVOSS's chief exec, shared a high-level overview at the community partnership, and community organisations have been invited to engage to test the approach. The High Sheriff and the former High Sheriff are supporting the development of corporate volunteering and younger people volunteering. We have a communications plan, we're launching events, and we would love to engage parish councillors. Thank you. I shall unshare.
Thank you. Some useful, really useful information. I know, Councillor Summers, you should have your hand up there. Is it possible? I'm just conscious of time. Is it a quick one, or can we pop it into the chat so we can respond?
That's fine, Amy. I'll leave it go. Thank you.
Thank you. Very happy if you can pop it into the chat for us to have a look at. Okay, so we're just going to move into some workshops now. I think we're going to split, because there's not that many of us tonight, into two groups for sort of a couple of key questions. We will pop the questions again into the chat, unless Lorna, you've got them on a slide. Oh, Lorna's disappeared.
I'm here.
You are there.
I'm here. Sorry. Am I here?
You are now.
I've not gone anywhere.
Wait.
I was a vision.
Slipped over the desk there. Do we have them on a slide, Lorna, or are we going to put them in the chat so everyone can look at them?
They're not in. They're not on a slide. I can put them in a chat.
Okay, great.
Each facilitator has those questions with them.
Brilliant. So we'll have a facilitator in each room and some people taking notes, but primarily this is obviously linking back into what we've just discussed here tonight in terms of the voluntary and community sector report and the volunteer strategy that Karen's just talked through, and how that can be linked into the parish councils working together in the local community, and what support's currently being provided between organisations, and if there's anything further really we can look at to be doing, and also also to feed in any comments, any suggestions into those two reports and overviews that we've provided this evening. So I'd say we've got about 25 minutes. So we'll come back into the room at 8:10 and we'll feed them back briefly into the whole group.
Okay, I'll give a few minutes warning to finish off before we come back. Okay.
Okay, Karen, have you you're looking to facilitate this group, I understand?
Am I? I am. I'm sorry, Amy. That's a surprise, but I'm very.
Oh, sorry. I thought okay, it's fine. I can absolutely I can do this. I can cover that anyway, but
Okay,
that's my
thanks.
Okay, so I don't know if there's any before we sort of get into it, if there's any initial overview of that or any initial feedback in terms of what you heard there this evening from Karen or Nina. Karen.
I noted as we were leaving and coming into the breakout room that that who asked the question? Sumner said
Karen
that. Yeah, that was it. Apologies. Was saying that there was still a lot of jargon. So I wondered whether anybody else. Yeah. Do we still expect everyone to understand? So was that me or was that Nina, do you think?
I don't know. We can go back to Councillor Summers and ask him to.
I was just wondering whether anyone in the breakout had a view on that.
No. Okay. Councillor Tyler, I'm conscious you've turned your camera off, so I'm not sure if you might have had to dash off, but I know you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, sorry, I had to take a phone call, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
But yeah, well, being portfolio member for the Talk Parish or Talk Community, all the information that's been shared this evening is really, really useful. And I'm particularly sort of very pleased that HVOSS is now looking at their strategy to support the voluntary and community sectors going forward. And I think it's crucial that we do link in with the Talk Community Hub, because there's I think 57 at the moment standing at Amy at the moment, 57, you know, and I really do want parishes to sort of link in with communities and encourage them to come forward. So if we can do that collaboratively through Talk Parish as well, then I think we can see the potential for this network to grow. But more importantly, it's the businesses becoming confident enough to be working with the voluntary sector, because I feel that is a bit of a link that's missing. But that's my observation at the moment. Thanks, Amy.
You need to unmute, Amy.
Sorry about that. Right, sorry, Angie. Apologies. You I thought you weren't unmuting yourself.
Yeah, Ledbury Town Council are working quite well with the volunteers and the volunteer organisations in Ledbury. I don't know if we have a really high level of volunteers in Ledbury. We've recently recruited a community development officer, and their role is to work to try and get all of our volunteer groups to work cohesively together to see what they can offer each other within those groups and bring them together. And also the other thing we're working with, the community hub meetings that we have, they're really working. The amount of groups that we got that attend the community hub meetings in Ledbury is amazing, and we're all coming together really well and sharing different ideas and experiences, and we're finding that the council and the volunteer groups and different organisations are all pretty much looking towards doing things the same way, but they never knew that each other was doing it or wanted to do it. So that's coming together really well.
Oh, that's really, really great to hear in terms of that collaborative working and that facilitation across Ledbury. I know you've got a really enthusiastic Talk Community Development Officer in Ledbury, Amy. So I know she's great in pulling everyone together. So it's really good to hear that. And I think then it's how really great thinking through how we can work together and how we can work collaboratively on a number of issues that you may have and also what we have as well and what we jointly have. So that's great to hear. And the volunteer sorry, was it the volunteer coordinator you have in Ledbury, or is it a
community development officer?
Oh, great. And they full-time, part-time?
Full-time, yeah.
And their role is similar, community development, working with
yeah, work with the community, bring the community together, try and get groups to work with each other, and we facilitate. Her role is to facilitate a lot of stuff through the council. Yeah, help them find grant funding as well. All sorts of things. Yeah,
fantastic. Thanks for that, Andy. Really helpful. Lee.
Hi. Yeah, so a bit smaller than Ledbury, but one of the main things we do in Credon Hill is provide funding, Section 137 funding to all of the groups really that apply. What's been interesting over the last couple of years is seeing that quite a few of the groups that you'd expect to apply for money haven't applied, like the Scouts, for example. They've gone through a big change here where they're struggling to get volunteers on board. So, there's quite a complicated system of doing the application form and so on and providing the right information. So I've been working with them to do that actually for them in some cases. I think they just need sometimes more support than just saying money's available. Actually helping them fill the forms in and so on can be, I think, a big support. But yeah, providing funding each year, the parish council set aside about 10% of the precept for local charities in Credon Hill.
Brilliant. And what sort of, are you able to say what kind of level of funding that is and also how much they can apply for?
Well, we don't put a limit on what they can apply for. Obviously, it's only £4,000, I think it was, the last 12 months. Obviously, all parish councils can set aside funding for charities and community groups. And, this year we've supported the PTFA at the school. We've supported the Scouts for Beavers, the community hall, which obviously provides a lot of groups, and Jubilee street party for the children at the social club. So Magna Performing Arts as well. So lots of groups. So if you look at how many people that's helped, it's quite significant on a small scale, if you like. So that's kind of what we're doing at the moment.
That sounds great. And although it's a small scale, often it has a really big impact, doesn't it, in terms of that? Yeah. So brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, Lee. Simon.
Much the same, really. The parish council, of course, is a voluntary and community group, really. So, but we give grants. We give about 5,000 of our 21,000 precept to local community organisations. We tend to get the same people bidding each year, and we actively encourage sort of new groups to apply for grants. We sometimes have difficulty giving the money away. But like others, we multi-organisation meetings, particularly Jubilee Planning was a good example. The community magazine is a sort of joint magazine across a number of organisations. We have a sort of a 4 times a year quarterly multi-organisation working group of the sort of key players, the PCC, the church, the Cops Trust, Leisure Trust, Simpson Hall, our village hall. So we try to encourage and coordinate and promote community and voluntary activity. At the moment, particularly trying to encourage young people to get more involved, and a whole sort of post-COVID recovery around sort of social inclusion and potentially social isolation. So nothing particularly or much probably that others are doing.
No, but another great example there in terms of what has been provided at very low level, which is often what those really key groups that are providing that support. So thank you, Simon. I mean, what is there anything? I mean, there's some great examples there. Hearing what we've heard this evening, is there anything else you think as parish councils and the council we could be doing jointly to support some of what's come through? Or anything else you think that, you know, either yourselves or like I say, or working jointly with us that we could do to support these voluntary organisations and across either in your area or across the county?
Just as a follow-up, I think one of the difficulties we have is that we are actively supporting the established voluntary organisations, you know, the ones that have been around for years, and actually sometimes they're not particularly short of funding. You know, funding isn't the issue for them. What we sometimes struggle with is sort of initiating new voluntary groups from scratch to support new initiatives, really. So I think there's something around, we spend a lot of time supporting existing organisations and struggle sometimes to get new voluntary community groups off the ground at a very early stage, where people have just got sort of a very broad idea and don't know where to go, really. So that's where we seem to struggle slightly.
And obviously through Talk Community we can help with that, Simon. So maybe it's how we ensure that, you know, we're linked into where everyone needs to go in terms of that support, because we've got the Talk Community Development Officers, but also we've got an online toolkit as well that helps provide information, but you know, and obviously there's HVOSS as well, so a number of different avenues that we could signpost people to and identify. Yeah, thank you. Lee?
Yeah, I was just similar to Simon, our neighbour, actually. We've got a few unconstituted groups that obviously, due to the restrictions around grant giving, we can't give funds to or support in that way. And I think if there was a way in which either the council or, well, we can't do it really, could get funding to some of those groups. Like, for example, there's a craft/knitting group that meets every Friday on at the community hall here, and I know they struggle to raise the funds to keep going because they have to hire the hall. You know, groups like that don't have a constitution clearly have a community benefit. They could really do with some help financially.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And Councillor Tyler, I don't know if you want to come in there in terms of the work that you and I have been doing with very early stages with Community Foundation. So I won't steal your thunder, Councillor Tyler, because I know this is a passion of yours.
It is a passion of mine, because I'm also a charity manager for my own charity. I've always found it very difficult to approach businesses to seek funding for different sponsorships that I may do. And I think involving myself with the Life and Soul Kitchen a couple of weeks ago, which the High Sheriff put on that sort of networking breakfast that morning to link businesses to charities, and it was highlighted that many charities struggle to connect with the business, and the businesses supporting charities and having that trust there, because charities are always ridiculed about our accounting and governance and, you know, all our procedures and protocols, how we run our business. Because charities are a business, we are accountable to Charities Commission, and if it's not for profit, you have to go to Companies House with your accounts. So it's finding that link, how we can support the charity with funding, but enabling the business to connect with us. And that's why myself and Amy has approached the Herefordshire Community Foundation to be that link. So in other words, they would have a pot of money which would be contributed by the business community, and they would enable funding to go directly from themselves to charities. So it would be unring-fenced, and you could apply for funding in terms of your administration, hiring a hall, your media, your digital capacity. It could be anything like that, as well as some form of part-time working, because that is the crux of problems with charities. They cannot find the funding to run the charity efficiently, so they can enable themselves to be, can see a sustainable future. And having COVID hit us, we were really hit by that, because everybody changed their habits of contributions and how they all work from home. So the charity and volunteer sector wasn't in the mindset of businesses. They needed to concentrate on their business to enable them to keep going after narrowing going forward from COVID. So those are critical talks at the moment, and I'm really hopeful that we can enable that going forward. We're, like you say, we're in early stages here, but it's something that I felt is critically missing with business supporting the charity and volunteer sector. So I'm very hopeful that something can move along on those lines, because if it's unring fenced, then charities can apply and businesses can put into this funding pot, and then we can go back after a year to say, this is who we supported, this is their outcomes, this is what they've delivered through that funding. And it repeats every year, and more business may come forward to be sponsorship, to donate more money, because we need to grow our voluntary sector and charity sector in Herefordshire, or sustain them. So that's why I'm very passionate about this as well. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler. Thank you. David, I think you had your hand up.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, and I'm sorry there's no video, but I seem to at the end of a not very good bit of string from the internet, so apologies for that. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Great. I just wanted to. It was actually something that Simon Burkhill mentioned. Kington, we also have a fund for charity for grants for local groups. One of the things I've noticed, and Bob Widdowson's also online, who's a fellow councillor, is that it's the standard of application is how should I put it, variable. And I can't help wondering whether some external help to help groups to know how to apply for funding. I mean, our form is I think relatively simple, but even then, they're very often very poorly completed, and it might be very, very, very worthy, but it's like if you read something that's badly filled in, like a job application, you go, oh blimey, and it sort of tends to turn you off a bit.
Yeah.
Just some sort of workshop for groups like that. Say, look, this is how you fill in. This is how you go about actually applying for funding. I think would be very useful.
Yes, yeah, and it's something we've sort of certainly through HVOSS been providing, but I think probably what's interesting is maybe those groups we're not reaching them. Because and that might be, then we probably need to think through, are you aware of these events that are happening? So then maybe you can pass it through to your routes as well, when the individuals are coming and organisations are coming forward, so you're also aware of that resource available either through the Talk Community website, either through HVOSS like before, or even through the Talk Community development officers as well. Sure. But I think that's going to be key, isn't it, to ensuring that we are reaching everybody as much as we possibly can.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, but it's really, some really good points, because like you say, often people have got a great idea, haven't they, but actually how they're describing it is really difficult to support, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, David.
Can I just come in on that, Amy, as well? And some of the application forms can be very, very complicated. So, if you're looking at say 2 to 2 years of accountancy, and if you're a very small CIC or a small charity, you may not have a year account. So it's I know the Hereford City Council going through a major reform of their grant applications now, and perhaps that's something we can look at as well going forward, Amy.
Yeah.
Perhaps have a uniformed approach for grant funding across all town councils. So it's easier to find, because when I sit on the Community Development Board at the Hereford City Council, it is the same community groups coming forward because they're used to filling out an in-depth application form. They're used to standing in front of a panel and giving an overview of what they want to do as their project. But a lot of smaller groups are frightened of doing that. You know, they don't want to stand up in front of a board and be questioned about their passion. You know, you could, if you know your passion, you know what you want to do with the community, and a simple form exercise would be easier to enable more groups to come forward. And I think the complication of application form puts off a lot of smaller groups, and that's something we need to be looking at as well.
Yes, no, I agree. Streamlining that approach would be really helpful, wouldn't it? Karen, you might want to come in on that as well in terms of a slight response, and also I know you've had your hand up there for a while as well.
That's fine. It was in response to the first point about the community foundation, but then following on from that. So one of the things we've found that groups aren't always clear about is what they really need. They think they need one thing, but actually it probably could be achieved another way. So what Councillor Tyler was saying about an accountant person, a few hours, for example, and attracting funding for that. It may be that we could find a way of sourcing that elsewhere through the sharing of skills of an organisation or a bit of partnership working, where they wouldn't need to look for funding for that. And if they did seek funding, it might be easier to get it for something else, for something different. So we want to make good use of what funding there is available out there. So there are several strands to this. So helping organisations to know and then articulate what it is they really need, I think, is a key point, and we're very keen to support them in that.
Thanks, Karen. And a great resource there. Bob? Oh, Bob, sorry, you're on mute. You following my lead earlier.
I'm there. Yep, I'm back.
I can hear you now. Brilliant.
I haven't read the study, obviously, but I wonder whether the study has looked at the question of mergers, and this particular question relating to voluntary organisations that are registered charities or CICs. I mean, obviously, with unconstituted groups, and that's the majority in Kington, it's not really an issue because let them carry on. But the big problem with charities is things like finding a treasurer, is things like finding blah, 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 blah. And everybody's often chasing the same thing. But I really have got serious questions. I was very surprised at the numbers being quoted in that study. I've got serious questions about how many of those are viable and would be more viable if they actually were pulled together, because there's no point in chasing hundreds of organisations chasing the same thing to prop up something that frankly isn't viable. I just wonder whether that's come across anybody's radar.
I think it's a fantastic point and something that we're really keen, and I know through HVOSS are really keen to try and support and encourage collaboration between organisations, whether it's either frontline delivery or back office functions that you're describing there. I think, like you say, future sustainability, it's a key area, isn't it, in terms of how do we support them, reduce overheads by sharing resources and assets and etc. And I know, Karen, again, you popped your hand up, so I don't know whether that's a direct response into that.
It is. As far as sharing resources are concerned, I'm sure there is enormous potential to do that. However, Councillor Tyler mentioned small groups with a passion to do something. And if you were to suggest to a small group that they merge with another group, I think it would be very, very difficult. And it's been suggested in the past, some groups are keen to work collaboratively, and that may be the first step. I think a merger is a whole big different thing. We're talking to several groups over the response to the Ukrainian refugees, for example. There is enormous passion and commitment out there, and there is a commitment to partnership working, which is coming through the community network. However, I don't believe that it will lead to any mergers, although it is something we obviously need to be thinking about.
Maybe it's not mergers, maybe it is that sort of back office collaboration, isn't it, of sharing rather than necessarily merging of what service delivery is So yeah, maybe that's probably more the wording, but I think that's, again, you know, a really great idea. Lee?
Yeah, I'm just going back to the grant forms, and all of the parish councils obviously have the same process and legislation that they're required to follow regarding Section 137 grants for local organisations. If Hereford Council was to coordinate getting the same forms for each parish council, then you could do a video on how to fill them in. Obviously, each parish council hasn't got the resource to do their own videos or whatever, but if there was a more joined up approach across the county, then that might be a better way to attack it. I mean, I'm quite happy to share my screen and show you our application form. I mean, it's a really simple form: organisation details, how much they're after in total for the project. You know, it isn't exactly a complicated form.
No form, no.
And that's it. And then, you know, tick box exercise to say what you need to provide.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. Really great idea.
So our form is very simple, and I'm sure everybody else's is very simple, but they're all different because we are all.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant, thank you. And I'm conscious of time because we've got 43 seconds, but Angie, did you want to come in?
Yeah, that was just on the point that Lee just said there. The issue I would have with that is parish councils have a very, potentially parish and town councils, our criteria may be different because we can afford to give more and we look at it differently, and we have bigger organisations. So I think if it was happening, they'd have to look at something for town councils and something for parish councils that was slightly different. Yeah. Something we something we can look at through the reference group as well as a key one that we could pick up. Brilliant, thank you. Thanks all for your time. I think we're just about to pop back to the main room now.
Have we lost Amy?
Where is everybody? Oh, we're coming back slowly.
Are they still floating around, Lorna, or have we lost a few along the way? I'm thinking I can't see Amy here.
Well, we've lost about 4 so far.
How strange.
Right, so Nina, do you want to?
Lorna.
Yeah. Hi, Kelly. Oh, internet's going.
Been out. There are a few people have been kicked out. I can see people frozen now.
Okay, yeah.
Internet connection is unstable. I've got on my screen.
Yeah, I can't hear you
Don't know
well.
if others are seeing that.
I can't hear you
What
well.
the weather. Is everybody frozen?
Possibly. It's.
No, I haven't frozen.
No.
Oh no. Oh.
I think we have lost obviously 4 or 5 people looking at the participants list. I don't know if they're still able to be invited through the chat, so I'll have a look at that now in the background.
Okay, thanks, Toby.
So this is going to be a feedback session, is that right?
Yeah.
So Nina, do you want to kick off with our group, and then somebody else think about whether they can maybe Karen, you could you've got a couple of minutes to
Thank you.
Nina.
Bandwidth issues.
Right. Okay, so from our group, when we looked at examples of parish councils working with voluntary and community organisations, there was quite a lot of breadth because we had both town councils and parish councils in our group. So there were good examples of where parish councils had funded or started up. We had an example of a Good Neighbour scheme in Orcop, and they invested in that initially, and then it's now self-funding and self-sustaining. There were also examples in town councils about sharing information across partners, so mechanisms for doing that, and that was of benefit to all parties, and led to some practical solutions. We did have some very small parishes, very rural parishes, and I think there was a reflection that really the voluntary and community sector wasn't present in those parishes, and it was the parish council that was very much the community organisation, and supporting its community, and the parish councillors were very busy doing that, and being involved, and we had occasions where parish councillors were on the parish council, they were also on the village hall committee, etc. So parish councils very much involved in their local community. In terms of question 2, the strongest support that I guess parish council give their voluntary and community sector, or the easiest one to quantify, is around grant funding. So most of the parish councils had a grant funding pot. Some might, for instance, Leominster had a specific pot to support youth projects, but there was also, from the perspective of a community organisation on the group, it was the acknowledgement of the parish council about what that community organisation was doing that was valued as well, getting that recognition. There was some discussion about trust funding. So a lot of the parish councils have local trusts, and some of that, or most of that, is probably supporting local individuals, but they sometimes struggle to get that money out. So there was a suggestion that Amy, that we could do some more work around that in terms of Talk Community, which was an interesting suggestion. And then just in terms of supporting volunteering, there was the suggestion that we need to generally support our volunteers to be better trained. And one suggestion was around mental health first aid training, which was interesting in terms of supporting people. That certainly the issue that was raised through the voluntary and community sector about the need to support people's mental health, especially those issues around low level mental health support. And somebody very rightly said, who volunteers, that you need to emphasize both the benefits to the organisation that you're volunteering for and their beneficiaries, but also to yourself. So the benefits of volunteering are felt by the individual who volunteers, as well as the organisations or the beneficiaries of the organisation that they volunteer for. Social media was a suggestion in terms of trying to encourage volunteering. And if we are going to encourage young people to volunteer, I think parish councils will be very interested. They don't necessarily have the solutions, but if we come up with some suggestions, I think they will be very interested in those shared around the table. So I don't know whether the other group is going to come up with some suggestions around that. But I think hopefully that's a reasonable summary of the group that we were in, Councillor Kitchener.
Okay, Amy, you're back. If you want to, drive this, you can.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Apologies, I don't know what happened there. I can't seem to got kicked out the meeting, so I'm now on my phone. So yeah, I mean, obviously just some great feedback there, Nina, that we need to capture and take forward some really great suggestions. And certainly from the group that we were in, we talked about some information that's already happening, and some grants that's happening already. So both Credon Hill and Burgh Hill are providing grants through their precept and allocating that, and also Ledbury doing similar things, as well as they're also, Ledbury have just recently recruited a community development officer to support the community organisations in the area, full-time community development officer, to work with groups and Talk Community and other organisations as well to coordinate that. So some really great forward-thinking elements going on there. And also Ledbury are part of our community hub network meetings and found them really working really well in terms of that collaborative approach. Some of the things that came forward from our group was actually how do we kind of support some of these unconstituted groups with getting funding, but also around some of the grant application forms, so filling out things like the grant application forms, making them, considering how we could make them more standardised across parish councils. So it's very easy for us then to be completed by the organisations, but also again for us through Talk Community and HVOSS to look at avenues of how we could support organisations to complete those application forms. And because at the moment it's quite varied in terms of the standard of the forms and how they are being completed. So it was about actually, could we standardise some of the forms, and then once we have done that, could we look to do some support available to those groups or increase support? We did talk about the support available, but it may be because there is already support available, but it's ensuring that we're reaching the groups that need it the most, and linking through those different avenues as well. The other thing that came up was around how could we ensure that these groups are more sustainable going forward, and potentially looking to support them around sharing resources, sort of back office resources, so maybe accountants or marketing or things like that. So actually, there is that kind of reduced overhead coming forward for those organisations, and how do we look to work with them in terms of that collaborative approach? And again, something that we can actually look at through Talk Community. So some really good conversations, some good stuff that's already going on, and I think some good stuff that we can certainly take forward in the future. And Councillor Tyler, I don't know if you just want to touch on, which we shared with our group, the work that we're just starting with Community Foundation.
Yeah, certainly, Amy. I'd just like to mention that I attended the Life and Soul Kitchen, which was sort of organised by the High Sheriff, the former High Sheriff. And it was to talk about linking businesses with charities. And having my own charity, I always find it very difficult to seek the funding for unring fence funding to sort of support my charity going forward. And I sort of spoke with Amy about this, and we approached the Hereford Community Foundation to sort of see how they could support bringing in businesses to look at donating some funding where the ring fence would be from themselves to support charities or CICs in any sort of initiative they wanted to bring forward. So that's we're in sort of small steps going forward. But I find that the biggest hurdle in my role as a charity manager. But it's important that businesses feel that when they support charity, they are using their money well for the charities and what their outcomes are going to be. So I'm hoping we can form a relationship here and help small groups look at the grant funds, look at how we can support them filling in the application forms, and reduce the stress of going through that process, because every charity, every organisation has a benefit for the public, and more we can do to support and collaboratively work together. I think we really can do this through Talk Community. And it's been remarkable discussions this evening about how much we all do want to work together and support the voluntary sector, as well as the parish councils doing their part for their groups as well in each community. And I think that is a key element here, how we can all work through Talk Community and going forward with HVOSS and the Hereford Community Foundation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler. That's really helpful. So thank you, yes, for inputting into that. And I think this really helps us in terms of informing the action plan with regard to the state of the sector and the voluntary volunteer strategy. And what we will do, we'll look to take these notes and move some of this forward. We'll have a conversation with Simon as well as the chair of the reference group to see if some of them potentially could sit within the reference group as well to take forward and then bring back to this talk, the next talk parish meeting. So So thank you. So just if you're happy, Councillor Hitchener, just to move on. I can't see any hands unless there are. Apologies with being on my phone. No hands up.
No hands, no.
Okay, great. So if we just move on to the sort of final probably 2 items, which is Kelly to cover both the survey results that we sent out a survey sort of 6 weeks ago to all parish councils around the Talk Parish meeting, what you'd like to see and get some feedback from you, and then also to give you a bit of an overview and briefing of the community thank you events that we're hosting at the moment as well. Kelly, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Amy. I'll just share my screen. Okay. Okay, is that shared?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so as Amy said, this is the feedback from the survey now. So 49 parishes completed the survey, so thank you to those who did that. 77% of those that completed the survey attended a parish in the last month, and then find the Talk Parish beneficial for information sharing, joint working and networking. So January Talk Parish was about the ICS, so the integrated care system. So some specific feedback on that agenda item. 98% felt that they now understand the integrated care system better. They found the information was communicated well. It was relevant and helpful, and it was useful to hear and exchange ideas. And a little point there around if the presentation had been prior to the meeting, the information may have been easier to understand. So something for us to consider and take forward to the next groups. Barriers to attending, lack of information is circulated after every Talk Parish. So we'll be sending the slides and any meeting notes out for those that are unable to attend. The day of the parish, we've scheduled that for different days. So for every Tuesday, be able to come to the next one, which is on the Wednesday. So we've done that. Topics on relevant, this Talk Parish reference group mandate to agree what topics are going to be discussed following the feedback from the list of topics to cover there. Okay, so the Talk Parish, 70 felt that the structure works. Some suggestions to consider: question presentations in advance, so you're fully briefed of what's going to be presented. Reduce the time of presentation and PowerPoints. And obviously we've had quite a few PowerPoints today, so you know that's something to think about a little bit more going forward. And potential agent answer section at the end of the meeting. So some points for us: we'll send out the workshop questions in advance. We will allow more time for the questions, and we'll meeting to save time traveling. And we will pick the topics based on your feedback. So note here, Talk Parish. The mandate was to produce a terms of reference, so we've got that draft completed. That needs to be finalised when the Talk Parish reference group does meet. At the moment, we are considering options for membership. So you may recall we sent out an email asking for members, but we need to bring something Bible Talk Parish meeting just to discuss that a little bit further. So that's where we are with that. So that's me ended for that one. now I've got to come out of that one and go into the other one, so please bear with me a minute.
Just as
am I still stop sharing?
Just as Kelly's doing that, are there any birds? No. No.
Okay. Yes, thank you events. So, hold on, I do apologize. I've put up the wrong slide. Let's find the right one. There we are. Okay, so thank you events. So we're holding a number of community thank you events starting on Saturday and finishing mid-September. So the aims of these community events.
Kelly, you're not sharing the screen at the moment.
Am I not? Okay. No. And show. Okay, let's try again. Share screen. Can we see the presentation?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So aims of the event, so say family for 2 years. It's to inspire people to get out and active and promote local activity and well-being providers and have a day out with family and friends. So the events themselves are local dignitary the event. So we have confirmation from the mayors in each of the towns that they will be attending, all except one, so that's really positive. Activities will vary at each of the venues, but will include swimming, badminton, soft play, we've got jungle gyms, there's group exercises, lots and lots going on. People attending will also be given a free hot or cold drink, and we've also got a number of other organisations in attendance as well, so they will have tables in the centre. So we've got information for Parish, HVOSS, ourselves, Talk Community, Echo, and Hereford Mind. So all the events are on the Talk Community Direct, doing quite a large social media campaign, Facebook, etc. So those are the date venue of are happening. So yeah, nice time for families over the summer to participate in something for free. From me, I think I've seen a hand pop up, David.
Yeah, that's me. I like that, what you just put forward greatly. However, I did suggest something, I don't know if Amy remembers, a couple of years ago, when we first started with Talk Community, was going around, there's a lot of fetes going on throughout the county in the summer, and I know we can't get to all of them, but if we had a couple of gazebos made, whenever these people have fetes or something, they usually need shelter, and if we had some gazebos made up with Talk Community on it. The other thing is that I think as much as possible, Talk Community should try and attend many of the fetes as they can, and have a presence at the fetes. It just shows you the link. It's the link between the residents and the council. We need more of that. Sometimes the councils in the background, we need them brought forward and be part of the community rather than the boss of the community, if you know what I mean. So I think that it would be a friendly way of doing things. And the fete is where you would surprise how many people show up at these affairs. And maybe, again, it was last year, 2 years ago, I brought this up. It was too late then, it's going to be too late now. But I think it's something that we should plan for next year, and make sure that we got gazebos made up with Talk Community on it. Yeah, obviously, it's working well. And let's get out to the community. And what you're doing there is great. That's really is great. But I think we need to expand it to a lot more parishes rather than just the big centres. Anyway, thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Councillor Summers. That's really helpful, and something we're really keen to do is to go out obviously into the community a lot more, whether it be officers or whether it be our Talk Community hubs or other Talk Community champions that we could get out there. So yes, and part of what Kelly's role is around that engagement with our community, so that detailed engagement plan which she's currently working on. And those stalls, like you say, either in the towns, in the city, or out there in the fates, are really key, and I'm really keen that we do get out there. So it's definitely on the plan. It is resource wise as well that we're trying to draft and get this in place, but also how we utilize our existing community network and hub infrastructure to support that as well is key. But also hopefully as parish councils for you to be advocates for us as well. If we can provide information through you, that would be fantastic as well. Okay, so that kind of brings us to an end for this evening. I'm conscious that it is we're slightly past time, but if there are any questions, again, sorry, I can't see very well on my phone this evening.
No, I think you're right, Amy. We should wind it up. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, Ange, do you want to say anything? I'll say just a little.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful for another useful meeting tonight, Amy and the team. There is a lot of presentation and a lot of information to take in, but I think the State of the Sector report has truly highlighted how many support groups are out there in our communities and doing a fabulous work. And I'm very keen to promote that through Talk Community and through our Talk parishes, and to enable everybody to collaboratively work together. So thank you again to the team, and I look forward to seeing you all again at our next meeting. When is that, Amy? I think is it September?
September now, yes. Yeah, we'll push the dates out again following with the notes for the next date.
Yeah, and obviously look at the questions you've raised and look at the topics you want to be discussing, and we'll do that going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, Ange, thanks very much. You don't have to look at the press or listen to the radio for very long to realise that things are not easy at the moment. I think we're entering a difficult time, and I think this is where Talk Community, HVOSS, the community really going to benefit enormously. So these sorts of meetings and events are really valuable. Everybody really appreciates what everybody's doing. I think we're going to really have to show ourselves how we can work together in the future. So thank you for coming this evening. Hopefully you've got something out of it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, officers, for being here as well. Thanks.
Thank you all.